Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas. So this particular topic is a little bit different from what you might have been hearing all the time. Normally in a generic DevOps setting, I just start this talk with describing Artifactory's basic features and stuff like that. I don't think I need to talk about that here because we are all sold into using Artifactory as a artifacts management system. Usually, we all know that. Artifactory is promoted as a platform for managing built artifacts. It basically, if you look at it, basically it's a file management system with the option to store metadata about the files. So that kind of opens up the opportunity to manage other sorts of files as well. Like typically, what I'm referring to is the static files, which might not really go through any strict build process or SCM, like source code control management system or something. But these files might be very important for your automation processes. For example, there might be some additional files required for your deployment, or totally unrelated to deployment, there could be other DevOps processes that are automated and which will require a lot of extra files. And one thing I've seen from my experience is that it is very hard to manage these files when it comes to an automated environment, especially when you have multi-data center environment. If you are not in a homogeneous public cloud environment like AWS, moving files from one data center to another or make these files, these supporting files, available everywhere, wherever you want to run your automated processes, is very hard. And it sounds pretty silly problem, but in an operational level, it's become very difficult. Sometimes you'll end up having the different versions of the file. So what I've seen is that with Artifactory, you could actually make that a little easier, and actually you can build a very highly reliable platform for sharing your files. That is on top of what you do with your built artifacts and stuff like that. So just to mention a couple of experiences, from my work. I used to work at Yahoo several years ago, and we used to use a tool called dist. Apparently, the previous talk was somebody from Yahoo, and they were actually talking about rolling out Artifactory at Yahoo. So it's kind of incidental. So we used to have this dist tool those days, and what it does was very simple. The build artifacts could be uploaded using the command line interface using the dist, and dist will actually replicate those files across the data center. And we have multiple data centers all over the world. So if you want to run an automated process in any data center, these files are readily available. So one is replication and the other one is availability. So then I moved out of Yahoo and then started working for smaller companies like startups and stuff like that. I found that I really missed dist because it's extremely difficult to move files around unless you work in a AWS kind of environment where you have S3 and stuff like that freely available. Highly available, and you can use it. But if you are in a mixed cloud or mixed or multi-data center environment, co-locations, you are pretty much up for surprises. So then I ran into Artifactory as a component in the build and release tool chain or CI, continuous integration. And soon I realized that I can use Artifactory to use for whatever I was missing in a dist, just to share files using the replication feature. So that's what I just want to talk about actually. It's nothing like I am going to talk in very highly technical. Basically, just want to stress the point that the Artifactory can be used to share files, which is very essential for very reliable automation processes. That includes deployment also, which normally we attribute Artifactory for. So a little bit about myself. I have 20 plus years experience. Did a lot of DevOps and system integration work. Rolled out DevOps projects for multiple clients and companies like writes about DevOps and talks like, talks in conferences like this. organizes meetups in San Jose area. If any of you are there, we can sync up on that front. And I work as a consultant. So this is a typical, CI/CD workflow. I think most everybody is very much, familiar with this one. Typically, you check. This is a standard CI/CD workflow, not the file sharing thing I'm talking about. You check in the changes to Git, source code management system like a Git, and every time you check in, it will kick off a build, which is triggered by Jenkins, and the artifacts will be checked into Artifactory, and the CS in the CI, in the continuous integration workflow, the build artifacts will be deployed into a non-production environment, and tests will be run, and on the other front, using the company's release process, some of the artifacts will be released to a release candidates, and that will be used for further deployments later on, using a configuration management tool like Ansible or Chef or some orchestration tool, basically. So this is a standard, use, which all of us are familiar with. So again, the repository of built artifact, that's a major use. You always talk about. The artifacts will be used as dependencies in downstream builds, and the release candidates will be used for deployment, standard use. The major, features of Artifactory that is useful for this purpose is, basically you can keep track of the build history, and you can also use it as a Docker registry in the recent features. And that is the traditional, the regular use of Artifactory that we are all familiar with as part of the build and release or CI toolchain. As a file sharing platform, the third-party tools and packages, which you will be very familiar with. If most of our builds are dependent upon a lot of third-party tools, so open source as well as other tools, or even components that are built within the company. So basically, we need to keep track of those tools and manage them. As a central location for support files, I just mentioned about that. Your DevOps processes normally depend upon a lot of other files, not just the built artifacts. So the sharing of the files become very important to go with your automated process. A single source of truth. I mentioned about this one again, if you have a multi-data center or multi-region environment, a cloud region environment, to have a single source of truth somewhere is very important. Otherwise, you'll end up having different versions, and that can create a lot of problems in your automated process. Especially in an automated environment, you won't get a chance to make corrections. Repository for files not suitable to track in a CM. One tendency I've seen at work is that whenever we have to manage some files, you check into Git or your SCM tool, SCM system, which sometimes can create problem because a lot of systems restrict the size, and that will have a major impact on your build process because the binary files tend to be very large, and every time you make a build, it has to be downloaded, and the whole build process will become very slow, as well as these days, we end up keeping a lot of builds. That can replicate across, the builds get replicated, and that can actually add to the size problem because each build will have a certain amount of size, and checking in binary into SCM system is not a good idea. But a lot of, it's very common to see that we check in binaries, which Artifactory can replace with. Actually, we can check into binaries there, and you can use the binaries or dependent files from the Artifactory instead of source code control system. So the build artifacts, again, that is a big one. And lately, we are also started managing Docker images in Artifactory. You can actually configure your Artifactory as a Docker registry. Third-party software artifacts available to your specific versions. So that is something I've seen at work. Most of the time when you do a deployment or something, you just download it on the fly and hope for the best. Sometimes your software might depend on a specific version of the third-party tool. And what I've seen is that for very high reliability, we need to have a cache. And Artifactory works very well. You can create, promote repositories and stuff like that on Artifactory, but from my experience, what I've seen is that download it, keep it, and so kind of source control, not source control, version control in your environment. That is far more reliable than create a remote repository to point to a third-party YAM repository or something. The other one is also very the restricted access to internet. A lot of the times, when you do deployment, you may not have even access to internet or very restricted access. On my previous job, there was a lot of, we had to install something at the client side, a part of the software at the client side, an agent. And each client has their own security policy and stuff like that, and sometimes they don't even have access to internet from their environment, or it is restricted the way we want to have it for the deployment. So having this one, having those files in Artifactory is very useful, because then we need to provide access from the client side to our environment, or take a snapshot to install it at an environment. Basically, a snapshot will always be available for you to use it in that scenario. App stack configuration files. This again, I got from my previous work where we had to configure, we had to deploy things for a lot of specific customers. So there are a lot of configuration files that are very client specific, and for a reason, and we were not actually checking those things into source code control system due to security, and as well as the people who actually does that, the client support engineers, they were not really even part of the application development team who had access to Perforce or Git. So we really needed a different system to manage that, which gave them really, really easy access as opposed to using SEM commands and stuff like that. So app stack, that's pretty important if you have a very wide range of applications. It doesn't have to be just production environments. It could be even non-production environment where for example the QA has to create different environments which will be different. The software will be different. The build will be the same, but it will be configured differently. And database backups and app directory snapshots. This is not really, I'm talking about the database backup of your production system. This is basically databases, instances that might be required to set up your QA or integration environments. In many times, for example, to bring up a MySQL instance, we did not really install from scratch. We just take a snapshot of a directory and then bring it up. All we cared was just to get a recent version of MySQL or something to do a test. There was just we did not even require a regular database in the sense, popular database, just a schema was more than enough. In that case, if you have a snapshot sitting somewhere, you can just download it, bring it up, and that will be much faster and reliable and than installing from the RPM or something. So basically, that's a part of DR for DevOps tools. In the sense, DR, basically disaster recovery. Like one use I'm familiar with, which I used, just take backup of Jenkins and then put that in, Artifactory, for example. We had other DR policies, but for EC recovery and as a second level DR step, we keep those things in Artifactory. Again, we need to have those things easily accessible. So Artifactory turned to be very useful. Later I will show you, this is not a demo, but I'll show you some Ansible playbook that actually does that. If you lose your if you lose your Jenkins, how you can recover that immediately, easily. For provisioning non-prod, I mentioned about that. So having the snapshot of application directories or databases is very useful. It's basically about the time and the consistency. If you provision your non-prod environments from backups, it's very consistent, as opposed to you build everything from scratch, like a playbook or something like that. So these are the techniques, we used to, I think you guys are all very familiar with this, in the absence of Artifactory, what we used to use is a mess, actually. It's up to the person's, skill level and, preference. NFS mounts, rsync, SFTP across DCs. homegrown solutions with REST API or CLI support, like I mentioned about the Yahoo's dist, right? It was a very good tool, but very clumsy. And I heard that Yahoo is now rolling out Artifactory over there. Which turned out to be a good thing to do. But it was a very powerful tool. For when there was no Artifactory available, they had to build that tool over there. It was a very powerful tool. It was doing its job. Or internal or public cloud storage solutions. I mentioned about S3. It's a very good tool. As long as you have a very homogeneous AWS environment, even you can use it for file management, even if you are not using AWS, because it has a REST API access and everything. So it can be used, but not as good as Artifactory. Use SEM. I mentioned about that. Typically, what I see is that if you start using, the build can become extremely bad. That's what I've seen. The moment you start using SEM for handling binary files and third-party tools, like for example, the standard thing will be some bunch of jar files, right? Third-party jar files, and it can create a major mess. If you start using it, but it can be done. But it can really impact your build environment. Entire CI toolchain. Replication status, source of truth instance in corp. There's another slide I want to show you. I mentioned about the source of truth, right? That's one of the most important aspect of the file sharing hub. You have one source of truth, and I think that is the most important part. You have one version of everything. Just like your build artifacts can be replicated across the data centers or cloud regions for consistency. Using the same principles, you basically have, replicate other files also. So basically, you have the corp instance. The problem is, you don't have any build environment, right? For other files, there's just static files. So it's important that you manage that along with your corp build and CI infrastructure, so that whatever strategy you follow for your build artifacts are followed for the other files also, rest of the files also. So typically, you have your corp instance where your build infrastructure, you have separate repository for other files, and then use your replication strategy, piggyback right on the other rest of it. Selected repos are replicated. Normally, to your production environment, you don't replicate all the repositories. Typically, you will go through a release process. Selected build artifacts will be selected for replication, and along with that, whatever you need, other files you need for automated processes, you replicate that. So maybe it all depends upon the company or strategy of the company, how you want to replicate. But typically, the instances sitting in production environments tend to be much smaller compared to the corp. If you just end up replicating, it can again become a big problem. This is something. So data center 1, data center 2, AWS is something I basically copied from what we had last in my previous job. This is a simple strategy. Jenkins and corp, and all the build, that's part of your CI infrastructure. The corp instance of Artifactory integrated with Jenkins, and then your automated processes will be using file. Either you'll be using files as well as uploading files. There could be some automated processing, that could be uploading files to the corp instance, and there could be ad hoc users. For example, client support engineers who, you may use the UI to upload, download files for the use. Maybe take a snapshot of that and take it to our client site or something like that. So you have your CI infrastructure along with your automation process and the ad hoc users, who are not really part of the application development team or DevOps team, basically. Accessing file sharing hub. I actually use on the third one, basically configuring, configure the access in configuration management system. But these three things are possible. The first one is a really bad idea. Basically you have stuff in the corp instance, and you basically open ACLs to access that from your production environment. It may not be a great idea because, but it can be done. Second one is, big companies normally do that. Basically you configure CNAME or DNS to be data center aware, and then access it by report or mycode.com or something, and your CNAME DNS configuration will figure out where to go get it, basically, right? And configuration management system, usually, you have a data center variable passed into the playbook or something. Based upon that, it will pick up, the correct instance to take the, to connect to the correct Artifactory instance. The important thing is that, you basically have the replication strategy and all instances are, correctly replicated and available, so that irrespective of where the files are downloaded, they're all in good shape. Advantages of Artifactory, I don't think I think I'll be preaching to the choir, I guess, here. So it's already available. Normally, you bring in Artifactory as part of your CI/CD infrastructure, and then just use it for other things, right? So it's already available. So that's where I've seen that. Instead of using, even if you have a very homogeneous cloud and like AWS, for example, right? You can always use S3 for this kind of thing. But since you have Artifactory running, why don't we use that? Instead of using S3 to move around your files, other files, right? And then multi-data center support, replication easily. Using replication, you can easily use the, like multi-data center support. You can replicate to anywhere you want. UI, I don't have to talk about that. Ad hoc users, they love it. They want upload, downloading, they can easily take care of that without any zero training, basically. REST API, and that's where, again, it will do much better job than S3 or something, because the S3, the REST API support. So your scripts or anything, it's very easy to do. Just plug and play kind of feature. So the use cases, what I just, I'll just show you, a couple of very simple, Ansible playbook where, how these things are done. It's not a demo, but, just show you the code so that, how the artifacts are downloaded from Artifactory file sharing hub, and how it is configured to use in a multi data center environment. Let me see. Can you guys see it? Can you guys see it? So the first one, look at this. Basically, all these are Ansible playbooks. So look at the first one, the DC. So assume that you have 2 data centers and AWS region. It's very simple. You just configure a DC variable. And once you have something like that set up, just use as a DC name. From there, that's what I have used, previous thing, instead of using a DNS-based, redirection. So it will point to the right data center based upon what you pass in here, this one here, the extra variable DC. So this is another example, just one liner here, how to install a Vertica client, so you have your RPM still sitting there in your Artifactory, and just one liner. In Ansible, and you can get your stuff up and running wherever you want. The other one is I mentioned about bringing up your MySQL instance from a backup, the file backup, not from the RPM. So there are some details up there to configure. So the way we used to do was, it was one instance already existing. So our idea was get up and get one MySQL instance up and running on a different port. So that was actually required for a build, so the build process had some schema manipulation involved. So every time we bring in a new branch on Git, we need to have that new instance that build will talk to, some of the steps in the build will talk to the database, and then do some schema manipulation, get the file out, and then push in. It will be basically part of the build artifact. So every time you had a new branch, we need to have this one. So it was totally automated. So this disk file was sitting in Artifactory, and this will run this playbook from Jenkins itself by providing whatever port number you need, which branch and everything. So it will just download. So if you look at this one here, look at that one here. So repo location, third party MySQL. So that is just disk copy. That's it. I mean, and then if you can look at here, it's just extract it and then just bring it up. It will work. I mean, there was not a database only for the build purpose. So a lot of this kind of things that can be used. I'm pretty sure, every company has their own, requirements to do automations. This is one of the things, which turned out to be very easy to do. And Artifactory was very helpful in that aspect, actually. And this is the one I mentioned about the Jenkins DR. So we used to take all the regular backups of Jenkins. So this backup strategy was basically, we took all the configuration files and everything backed up into Artifactory again. There is a process in which you'll tarball it and then put it to Artifactory. And so DR method was actually bring up Jenkins from RPM, regular process, and then just replace whatever default configuration with what we have in the production. Not production, whatever we're using for our build process. So that turned out to be a pretty easy step to do. Again, this big tarball was sitting in Artifactory, and this is the playbook that actually will help to bring up the environment. So these are the use cases, so there are many other things, we used to do with Ansible, Artifactory. What I've seen is that, we have been using Artifactory for a lot of different purposes other than immediately related to, build. DevOps automation, it was very important, to manage other sorts of files. And Artifactory turned out to be very useful. And that's what I want to basically stress in this presentation. Thank you all. If you have any questions, I can take that as well.
Any questions?
Do you have any experience or thoughts on using Artifactory's web dev feature to allow end users to kind of mount a repository and use their file explorer to kind of post it and pull down files?
You mean sharing? No, I didn't get the part of which is the application you're talking about?
Right. So for file sharing,
right.
So Artifactory supports the web dev protocol.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
No.
your file explorer, you can kind of mount that.
No. Mainly we were using for the DevOps automation. Right. Not direct use. Direct use normally. People were let to use the UI download. We haven't gone beyond that actually.
Right. Be maybe an alternative to the UI, right? So if some users are kind of fixed in their way, right, instead of a mount or SMB share, right? If those files also need to be distributed throughout your organization.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Do the same process that they're used to, but it just magically gets in the Artifactory.
Okay. Never use that way. Yeah.
Do you have any preferences with regard to doing replication, whether it be push-based from the hub instance?
What we use is actually, pull, because we, my last one where we, rolled out Artifact in a big way was, we were using Pro version, which only supported, one way, right? One replication. So we were we had 3 instances, and so we were basically pulling, from the corp to one production environment, and another one, so we had a ring of, not ring exactly, chain. Yeah. I think, I don't know if there's a difference, but pull worked pretty well. Yeah, and very, very useful, yeah. We never seen any problem with that.
Regarding metadata, do you exclude metadata from pull, or do you?
No, we,
like RPM metadata, for example?
No, to a regular application, yeah. Didn't exclude anything.
How big were the size of the files that you tested with?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. We were using, some of them were like gigabytes, like the database, I just showed the database, the MySQL copy, right? They're pretty big files, actually. Yeah.
Do you have any issues, like anything that's more than 3 gigs or something?
No. No issues actually, yeah. Previously, yeah, that's a good question, a good thing. I mean, before that, we used to use Jenkins, just, as a file sharing platform, you can use the REST API, right? And we ran into all kinds of problems, because whenever there's a large file, that was something what was resolved by using, Artifactory. No, it's Playbook actually. Yeah, so I would say CLI, in a REST API basically, right? No CLI. So basically we were having playbooks for everything, and playbooks were using REST API. Yeah.